I got into photography when I was, I think, 12 or 13 years old. There was no digital photography yet. It was all wet photography, black and white, student photography in the darkroom. You know, I like the process, and still to this day, I work in the darkroom. I like shooting film. I work in a documentary style fashion. I remember my father's books on time life photographers. I later went on to, when I found out like who was who of photography, Cartier-Bresson, Robert Capa, Werner Bischoff, all these photographers who were, world-class photographers in his Time Life Vietnam, Second World War books. Like a lot of kids, I grew up wanting to be a war photographer. So when I was 17, I photographed this protest at Old Parliament House, and it was a protest that turned pretty nasty. And I remember there being protesters pretty much to my immediate right, so I'd be shoulder to shoulder, and then on the other side was a line of police, and it was violent, it was confrontational. And I was photographing, and I was just looking at it all through the camera, and I was left alone, you know what I mean? I wasn't moved on, I wasn't sort of attacked. And ever since then, I've been into documentary photography. I just think it's exhilarating. I enjoy the act of looking. I enjoy the act of composing images. I enjoy the act of being in a photographic state of mind. I think it's important that you don't be removed completely from what you're doing. I need to know when to just listen to people. And sometimes as a photographer, you have a responsibility to actually just be there as a person. I usually have my camera sort of over my shoulder, so I'm quite proud to say that I'm a photographer and make it known that that's what I do. When I'm walking the dog, I don't really want to photograph anything, but that's when I feel that I'm most rewarded by photography. The fact that you go out without intent, and then things happen and you allow them to happen. Yeah, the hill up behind my parents' house is my favourite spot. I never want to be anywhere else. There's a couple of seats up there and you can just see the whole of Canberra pretty much. I really like editing, and I like looking back on pictures because that's really where the narrative for me comes. I still do some photojournalism, sort of documentary photography work, and that's very much driven by a story or a concept or an idea. In that sense, it's very personal. Like my mother was very sick for a couple of years, and that's when I started walking a lot just to get some headspace. And I look back in that work and I see her in hospital and all that stuff that was photographed as well, but what I see is the importance that played. And so my own photography actually teaches me things about myself. What inspires me about photography is just that integrity, that honesty. If there's something inherently personal that's written through that work, then I'm engaged. Then I'm really engaged. Photography is that space where it really is just sort of therapeutic in a way, and just going for walks around the neighbourhood, whether photographing or not. I have my camera with me, not necessarily trying to photograph, but being open and with photography. But the fact that I open myself to photography for a small amount of time every day. If you said what you'll be photographing is people's front yards and swing sets and landscapes and fence posts and trees and your dog and things like that, a couple of years ago I would have said you're crazy. Oh, I have two favourite cameras. A Mamiya 7, a medium format camera. It shoots 6:7 film, and I've mainly been shooting that with black and white film. It's a bit slower than 35mm. It's got a beautiful range, it's got a beautiful depth. I use an 80mm lens, I just use one lens. Now with the Mamiya 7, I don't even think about the camera that I'm using. I sort of see what I'm going to photograph before I even raise the camera. Because I only use a prime lens, I know exactly what I'm looking at from the distance that I see it. But I also like using 35mm, a Nikon 28 Ti, which is a point and shoot camera. I really love that camera. It's very quick. You just look through the viewfinder and the rangefinder and press the button, and it's just got a beautiful characteristic. These days I keep it really simple. I use one lens, one camera at a time, and one film, and I just develop it the same way every time. My style of photography is somewhat personal. I think it's objective in a sense, but it's very much a documentary style, which is as things happen. But I like shooting sort of wide. I like to show context, but I like light. I like the way light makes things look. I like contrast. I like texture. Working in the darkroom, I think, and making prints, the appreciation for tonality is just really something that I'm really interested in. I love greys. I like things which are a little bit wrong, not necessarily wrong, but not perfect. I like to work with multiple pictures. I like bodies of work. I like working in series, so I like putting pictures together that, as I said, helps me identify with a personal narrative that's happened or is still happening, will tell me a bit about myself and where I am. If there's not that honesty in the work to begin with, I find it very hard to do anything with. I look back at pictures that I know are more photographic than personally honest. I see those pictures and they just do nothing for me. I just don't associate with them at all. But pictures that are sort of pictures that are emotionally almost purging, that you just make without thinking, they're the pictures that I come back and see, wow, what is that? That's really interesting. So I think the pictures that are much more open-ended and are less photographic, for me personally, but that, some people say I've got a different style or what have you. My own work personally, I think, is something I'm still probably figuring out.